Welcome to the Smarter E podcast, a podcast for and with the creators of the new energy world. Each episode is a 20 minutes deep dive for you to be up to date on the latest market developments, emerging technologies, and relevant regulations around solar energy, energy storages, e-mobility, and integrated energy solutions. As at the beginning of each episode, we would like to thank a partner who supports us and with whom we work together successfully. Today, it's SMA. The company is one of the world's leading manufacturers of solar inverters as well as energy and storage solutions for all applications, from rooftop installations to solar power plants. SMA's environmentally friendly technology has been helping to pave the way for a climate-friendly energy supply of the future for almost 40 years. With our first episode, we want to dive deep into EU regulations, the details of the European Green Deal, and the effect of the recovery plan Next Generation Europe. As our expert guest, I'm pleased to welcome Aurelie Beauvais, Policy Director at SolarPower Europe. SolarPower Europe is the European association representing over 200 companies and organizations active across the solar value chain. Or in other words, if you are a stakeholder, decision maker or business owner invested in the new energy world, then Aurelie and her team are your voice in Brussels.
Hello, and thanks a lot for this invitation. I'm very happy to be there with you today.
I'm very happy to have you on this episode, Aurelie, so let's dive right into it. What is your personal opinion of this 750 billion euro recovery package called Next Generation EU? Do you think it is in line with a green economy or transitioning to a green economy?
Thanks for this question. Quite a burning one indeed. So I think from scratch, even though we still need to analyze it and see how the proposals are going to come into life into the next month, we can still start with a pretty good news that the recovery instrument seems indeed very much in line from our perspective with a green recovery. So you did mention the 2-year staggering 750 billion proposal, which is called Next Generation EU. And it has been developed with really the objectives of the European Green Deal at its core in order to target in the first place and where possible sustainable investments to boost the recovery of key European sectors. For example, rolling out renewable energy projects such as solar has been cited as one of the key pillars of the European recovery strategy, which is absolutely key to Europe's future prosperity and resilience. Speaking to our audience, of course, which is also very much interested to hear about the key highlights for solar, what we have so far is the implementation of a strategic investment facility, which will seek to unlock no less than 150 billion of investments in renewable and energy storage technologies. And so for SolarPower Europe, we see it as a huge opportunity to develop, for example, large-scale initiatives for the rollout of utility-scale solar installations. We could use this strategic investment facility as well to develop electricity grids, which are most needed at the moment. We could use it to develop solar manufacturing facilities as well, in line with the European industrial strategy. So this bucket of money, it remains unclear how we are going to be able to spend it, but what is sure is that we have a big portfolio for renewable projects and we can expect more detailed initiatives on that in the months to come.
Thanks, Aurelie. So when you hear about Next Generation EU, the other term that is always mentioned in the same sentence is the European Green Deal. Could you give us a quick recap for our listeners who are not familiar with it, what the European Green Deal is?
Yes, indeed. So the European Green Deal, in fact, is the flagship policy initiative of the new European Commission under the leadership of President-elect Ursula von der Leyen. And back in December 2019, she pledged to make the European Union the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. But behind this vision, there is also the will to put in place a true change in paradigm, which aims to make sustainability the core of our future economy and the main driver for growth. So the Green Deal, in fact, reaffirms the crucial role of renewable energies to power a climate-neutral future and seeks to maintain the role of Europe as a global climate leader. with the ambition of strengthening our industrial leadership in clean energy technologies, creating jobs, and ensuring that nobody gets left behind.
That sounds great. Are there certain numbers or goals specifically for businesses and organizations in the new energy world when it comes to solar power or mobility? What are like the milestone that they want to reach?
So the first goal, which is very important, is to review the target of CO2 emission reduction for 2030. So this target, which was 45% before, could be revised upward to at least 50% up to 55% by 2030. And in fact, deepening this commitment would really be a strong driver at European level for investments in green techs. But aside of that, you have a variety of initiatives. So, for example, supporting industrial leadership in solar technologies, or supporting with the renovation wave various solar rooftop programs in Europe. And you have another initiative on smart sectoral integration, which we really look at how to foster the deployment of renewables and flexibility sources across key sectors of the economy. So I'm thinking of battery storage in buildings, electric mobility in general, fostering demand response and solar PPAs for the industry. There is a great bunch of initiatives there that our audience should follow closely.
Mm-hmm. Are there already concrete ideas what is necessary? For example, does it go down to a level where there will be regulations that if you are, for example, constructing a new parking lot in an urban space, that you are required to put solar panels on the roof?
Yes, that's another initiative of the Green Deal, which is the renovation wave. And here, so it is set to be announced already at the end of 2020. And the idea is indeed to boost the renovation of the European building stock. And here we have a very concrete link with Next Generation EU, because indeed there is also a standalone point in the recovery plan for building renovation. And here we could have dedicated financing facilities which would help, for example, building at city level or community level big solar rooftop programs across Europe. So we're also contemplating this as an association to bring forward these asks. And maybe another initiative that would interest you is the smart sectoral integration strategy. And here the idea is, okay, we've done our homework, or so to say, in the power sector. So what should we do for other sectors of the economy, building, transports, notably? And so what's really at stake here in this strategy is to promote further the growth of solar and flexibility sources such as storage or EVs, for example, across sectors, and really push, for example, a very strong electrification agenda, which is probably very important for our audience at the moment.
It does sound like a great plan. Usually when it comes to politics, there's always like a backdoor or something. It's not clearly defined because so many people have different interests. So how binding will it be for countries and for companies to really follow through with that?
That's always the big question, indeed. So when it comes to how binding are the goals, for example, it is clear that becoming climate neutral by 2050, once agreed, will be a binding commitment. But you're fully right that at this point in time, there is not really a stick on the European Commission side to ensure that every country will deliver. And that's really why, in fact, building the whole narrative around it and making sure that we have the proper funds, the proper economic tools to accompany the implementation, despite having, let's say, targets for 2020, 2030, 2040 are very important. And notably as an association at SolarPower Europe, we focus a lot on the implementation milestones. And here maybe just citing three. The first one is clearly the previously adopted clean energy package. So these 2030 targets with 32% renewable energy in the Europe energy mix by 2030, for example. We still need to do a lot of homeworks at European level when it comes to permitting or financing additional renewable capacities. There is a lot of work to be done on grids. So you have the revision today of the Trans-European Network for Energy regulation, which is going to be absolutely critical, because without grid, there is no way we will be able to become climate neutral at this point in time. And another one, which I mentioned earlier and which is really critical, is the smart sectoral integration strategy, which in fact will make sure we have a clear commitment towards electrification for the uses where it makes the most sense, so buildings and light transport, notably.
Now, with COVID-19, obviously some states are really badly hit. If you look to Italy, if you look to Spain, and I guess they really struggle to rebuild the economy in the coming years. Do you think that also with the recovery package, they will stay on track for a climate-neutral future?
I think the recovery package is very much directed to that. So I mentioned earlier one block which was for companies and kickstarting the economy. There is one block which is fully dedicated to supporting member states to recover. So that's what they call the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which will really look at supporting investments and reforms for the green and digital transition in each member state. So probably each member state will have its bucket of European state aid to help them progress towards their climate commitment. And there is also a reinforced just transition mechanism, which has been further enhanced with additional funding, in fact, to ensure that the countries that are the most likely to be hit and were already hit in the past, so for example, transitioning core regions, will be able to keep up with the pace of the ambition. Notably, what we have seen is that following the COVID crisis, in fact, Poland, for example, stood out really as a country that did not call for stopping everything, but on the contrary, asked for extra help because they wanted to make sure that on their side, the recovery would be green, even though acknowledging that the economic situation would call for stronger EU support.
When you look into Next Gen EU, there's actually a do no harm policy in regards to all the investments that will be made with these 750 billion euros, in the sense that you're not allowed to actually invest it in old technologies. So it has to go in the direction, for example, of renewable energies, which is great. Does that actually mean an advantage in regards to the Green Deal and future investments that we would not have had if it wasn't for COVID-19?
I think indeed the Next Generation EU goes one step forward compared to what we have had in the past. So this pocket money of 750 billion euros, indeed the European Commission was very clear that it would have to be dedicated to investments for green technologies and digitalization of our economy, the so-called twin transition, digital and green. And indeed, as announced by the Executive Vice President Timmermans, there would be an assessment on a case-by-case basis for each project when it comes to the do not harm principle. I think I might say that it is not entirely perfect because, for example, when you look at Next Generation EU, you also have dedicated support or open support to some technologies which are also fossil-based, such as, for example, carbon capture and storage. So there is a big question as to how, in fact, investments also in the field of oil and gas, for example, will be able to benefit to that, and how do you assess do not harm principle when it comes to these, even though it is quite clear that the biggest part of the money will go directly, for example, to sectors like solar and renewables, which are also much bigger when it comes to job creation in the short term.
When it comes to stakeholders, like, for example, business owners, young startups in electric mobility, how and where could they tap into the money from the Green Deal or from Next Gen EU?
The good news is that in this Next Generation EU, you have a bucket that is standalone, devolved to kickstart the economy and support private investments in the short term. So that's, for example, what they called solvency support instrument, which is kind of a bridge, which could be put in place as early as October 2020 and could enable direct access from companies to the European funding when it comes to pursuing their activities, for example. So the emergency instruments, which are really in the short term, are really focused at supporting companies that are encountering short-term issues, so viable in the long term, but obviously impacted by the crisis, to help them to remain afloat. and pursue their investment flows. So that's already very good news, potentially accessible as soon as October 2020. On the other hand, you have also, for example, Green Deal calls when it comes to innovation and R&D. These calls will be out very soon at European level. And here, the European Commission has put aside a great chunk of money again. So I think that is overall 94.4 billions, which will be taken for the MFF to develop dedicated calls for Horizon Europe and the Green Deal to foster innovation and R&D. So that's already two things that our audience can count on in the next month.
So that is good news, basically for everybody active in the new energy world. How hopeful are you? It's an ambitious goal to be climate neutral by 2050. I think it is even feasible to do it by 2040. But now, in the lights of Next Gen EU and also the Green Deal, do you think that we will actually make it?
As I said, I'm very hopeful in the sense that it is really great ambition. And I think the new Commission is showing an incredible leadership in this regard. Ursula von der Leyen has really set up a new style of leadership. And so far, we have seen very strong commitments when it comes to the so-called climate mainstreaming, which means everything we do, we have climate in our minds. When we promulgate new law, for example, this is what happens at EU level. And with this big level of commitment also from the monetary side, that is completely unprecedented. Then when it comes to my doubts, it might be much more trivial than that. And this is what I discussed earlier when it comes to the implementation milestones. We can have as much money as we want if we do not, for example, achieve more investments in electricity grids, if we do not develop a new climate pact to work with citizens and local authorities to develop large-scale solar installations, have these grid investments done, and have really ambitious policies across all sectors, this will not happen. And so here we have a problem of infrastructure, which also relies, for example, to the issues of social acceptance, etc. We need a new social contract for this in Europe today. And we also come in the end and always to the final decision of the member states on whether they will be able as well to bring forward this change in their own economies.
Thank you for these insights into Next Gen EU and the Green Deal. When it comes to SolarPower Europe, Aurelie, why should our listeners reach out to you? What can you help them with? And what are the benefits of being a member of SolarPower Europe?
So there are a variety of good reasons, and I'm not saying that because that's where I work, obviously. But first, I think working with a smart, committed, and extremely dynamic team, which is supporting the solar sector on a daily basis, working with our policy team to walk through the advocacy regulatory jungle at European level, and also to benefit from the immense networking opportunities which we propose to our members on a daily basis.
Thank you, Aurelie.
Thank you very much.
I think these are generally good news for a new energy world and everybody invested in transforming the European economy into a climate-friendly economy. I specifically like that in the EU Next Gen Recovery Package, there is an explicit do no harm policy. That's a big step forward compared to just the European Green Deal. And I think the combined power, from the one hand, the European Green Deal, which means 1.1 trillion euros spent over 10 years, plus the 750 billion euro recovery package. There's a good amount of money now flowing into the right directions and into the right technologies. Stay tuned for more episodes of the SmarterE podcast. And check out thesmartere.com for more information about the upcoming Global Market Outlook launch conference taking place from the 16th to 18th of June. A virtual event brought to you by the SmarterE together with SolarPower Europe.